he spent months secretly testing the loyalty of the people around him. The night he revealed the truth, he lost the only person who had truly seen him. To understand how he destroyed the one honest connection he had left, we need to go back to the beginning. Kareem returned every week, sitting at different tables, changing his appearance slightly each time. A trimmed beard one week, glasses the next. Casual clothes instead of tailored suits. He adjusted small details to avoid recognition, convincing himself that if anyone noticed patterns, the test would lose value. Each visit felt more calculated than the last. He stopped going out to enjoy meals anywhere else. His evenings became audits disguised as dinners. He watched how employees behaved when they thought no one important was around. He listened for tone shifts when managers stepped away. He observed how quickly staff corrected mistakes when they believed the guest had no influence. If a dish arrived late, he noted who apologized and who avoided eye contact. If a complaint arose at another table, he tracked whether support came immediately or reluctantly. He wrote private reports after every visit. Names, times, specific sentences, minor hesitations. Nothing dramatic on its own, but when placed into structured notes, small imperfections looked serious. Patterns appeared even when they were normal human fluctuations. His summaries grew longer. His language grew colder. Some staff were later fired based on accumulated observations. Officially, it was performance management. Internally, it was silent judgment delivered without warning. Employees were dismissed without ever knowing the true source of evaluation. The message traveled quickly through the branches. Someone unseen was watching. No one knew when. Morale quietly shifted. Conversations shortened. Laughter in kitchens faded when unfamiliar guests entered. Managers tightened supervision without understanding why. Pressure increased without explanation. What had once been routine work began to feel like constant examination. Lena remained consistent. She corrected billing mistakes that favored the restaurant, even when supervisors were not nearby. Each correction removed an opportunity for hidden profit. She defended a busboy who was blamed for a delayed order, calmly stating the timeline she had witnessed. That defense cost her ease with a shift manager who preferred quick blame over careful review. She once told Kareem, gently, that the kitchen standards were slipping on late shifts. She did not exaggerate. She did not dramatize. She simply stated what she saw. Her honesty narrowed his options. If she was willing to acknowledge internal flaws to a stranger, then transparency already existed within the system. That meant his secrecy was not encouraging trouble, it was replacing it. He tested her more directly. One evening, he left a large amount of cash on the table and walked out slowly enough to be seen but quickly enough to create doubt. Within seconds, she followed him outside, holding the money in both hands. Her breathing was steady, not panicked. She told him he had forgotten something. There was no hint of calculation in her expression. Instead of feeling reassured, Kareem felt challenged. A returned sum of money meant she could not be categorized as careless or opportunistic. The narrative of inevitable compromise weakened. On another visit, he complained unfairly about a dish he had nearly finished. The criticism was intentional, designed to provoke defensiveness or blame. She apologized for his experience but did not shift responsibility onto the kitchen staff. She offered a replacement without resentment. Her tone remained level. He increased the difficulty. He began asking leading questions about management decisions, about rumors of cost-cutting, about how leadership treated employees. The questions were framed casually, but their intent was precise. He wanted to see if she would speculate, criticize, or exaggerate. She answered carefully. She acknowledged challenges but avoided assumptions. She did not speak with bitterness. She did not protect leadership blindly. Her responses were balanced. With each test, the room felt tighter. Around them, tension grew in the branch. Staff sensed evaluation without knowing its source. managers became stricter. Small mistakes carried heavier consequences. The environment shifted from service to survival. No one spoke freely anymore. The cost of error felt larger than the mistake itself. And Lena began to notice something. She did not accuse him. She did not confront him, but her pauses lengthened when he asked certain questions. Her eyes studied him a second longer than before. The rhythm of her service remained professional, yet a layer of caution appeared. He ignored that change. Instead of recognizing discomfort as a warning, he saw it as confirmation that pressure revealed truth. He continued returning, continued probing, continued recording. What he failed to see was that every test reduced goodwill. Every silent note replaced trust with distance. The branch was no longer simply operating under standard, so it was operating under strain. And the more he tightened control, the fewer honest options remained. Kareem returned every week, sitting at different tables, changing his appearance slightly each time, a different jacket, a different posture. Sometimes he arrived earlier than the dinner rush, sometimes near closing. He tracked how energy shifted across hours, believing inconsistency revealed weakness. His presence was deliberate but hidden, and the more routine it became for him, the more unnatural it became for the environment he was studying. He watched how employees behaved when they thought no one important was around. When managers stepped into the office, he measured how quickly discipline softened. When supervisors returned, he measured how fast tension rose again. He noted who whispered complaints, who stayed silent, who worked mechanically. Every movement became data. Every hesitation became a potential flaw. He wrote private reports after each visit, often late at night, expanding minor observations into structured concerns. A delayed refill turned into lack of urgency. A brief disagreement became communication weakness. Isolated moments were framed as trends. The language he used grew sharper with every entry. And once written, those words carried weight beyond the moment that created them. Some staff were later fired. The decisions were justified through metrics and layered evaluations, but the foundation often traced back to his hidden observations. Employees left confused, told they were underperforming without fully understanding when or how. Others noticed the pattern. Performance reviews felt heavier. Mistakes felt permanent. Morale quietly shifted from pride to caution. Workers spoke less during shifts. Break times shortened. Staff avoided casual conversations near guests they did not recognize. The restaurant still functioned, but its seas had thinned. The atmosphere tightened around uncertainty. Lena remained consistent. She corrected billing mistakes that favored the restaurant, even when doing so slowed her section. Each correction reduced revenue in small amounts, but increased integrity in ways that went unmeasured. She defended a busboy who was blamed for a delayed order, explaining calmly that the delay came from the kitchen backlog. That defense cost her silent approval from a supervisor who preferred quick resolution over careful truth. She once told Kareem, gently, that the kitchen standards were slipping on late shifts. She did not dramatize the issue. She simply stated it as something that could be improved. Each of these moments narrowed his narrative. If dishonesty were inevitable, she was contradicting it. If self-preservation defined employees, she was resisting it. Instead of adjusting his belief, he adjusted the intensity of his tests. He left a large amount of cash on the table and walked toward the door without looking back. She followed him outside and returned it without hesitation. There was no performance in her voice, no suggestion that she expected recognition. The gesture was clean and immediate. Rather than closing the file on her character, he opened it further. On another visit, He complained unfairly about a dish he had almost finished. The complaint was structured to provoke blame or irritation. She apologized for his dissatisfaction but did not criticize the cook or deflect responsibility. She offered a solution and moved forward. Her tone did not harden. He escalated again. He asked subtle questions about management decisions, about internal frustrations, about whether employees felt supported. The questions were framed as curiosity from a regular customer. The intention was to draw out frustration or gossip. She answered carefully. She acknowledged challenges without attacking leadership. She did not exaggerate problems to build alliance. She did not defend blindly either. Her balance denied him the extremes he was searching for. Around them, pressure accumulated. Staff began double-checking minor tasks obsessively. Managers reviewed camera footage more often. Small errors were discussed with unusual seriousness. The invisible evaluation created visible strain. No one knew exactly what was being measured, so everything felt risky. Lena began to sense irregularity in him. His questions circled similar themes. His visits were too consistent to be coincidence. Her pauses grew slightly longer before answering. Her posture remained professional, but caution entered her responses. He interpreted that caution as progress, not warning. Instead of seeing discomfort, he saw layers peeling back. He continued returning, continued observing, continued documenting. The restaurant's efficiency held, but its comfort eroded. Conversations became guarded. Initiative decreased because risk felt dangerous. Every test reduced spontaneity. Every silent report replaced dialogue with suspicion. And as pressure built quietly across the branch, the space for trust grew smaller with each visit. One evening, Kareem called a sudden staff meeting. The notice was brief and non-negotiable. Managers were told to gather everyone before closing. No explanation was provided. The abruptness alone tightened the air. Employees stood in partial uniforms, some still holding order pads, others pulled from the kitchen mid-shift. The atmosphere carried the weight of something corrective. Executives stood beside him when he entered. Their presence removed any remaining sense of informality. This was not routine. This was judgment. He stepped forward and announced that for months he had been visiting locations anonymously, testing standards, observing behavior, documenting performance. His tone was controlled, almost instructional. He described it as necessary oversight, a strategic decision to ensure integrity across the company. Confusion moved across faces first, then realization. The quiet guest, the repeated visits, the careful questions. He began detailing behaviors, specific nights, specific incidents, delayed greetings, mishandled complaints, conversations overheard near the kitchen doors. He did not raise his voice. He did not insult anyone, but precision made it heavier. Each example proved that someone had been watching without their knowledge. The room shifted from confusion to exposure. He praised some actions as moments of professionalism under pressure. He criticized others as instances of carelessness or attitude. He framed it as constructive accountability. Yet the imbalance was clear. They had been evaluated without consent, judged without context, measured without awareness. Then he turned to Lena. He commended her honesty, her consistency, her refusal to exploit mistakes, her balanced responses to probing questions. He repeated specific tests of the returned cash, the unfair complaint, the careful answers about management. He described them as proof of character. He told the room she represented the standard he expected. Applause followed, uncertain but obedient. But her face changed. Recognition replaced confusion. The pattern of visits aligned. The questions made sense. The discomfort she had felt now had confirmation. She had not been building rapport with a regular guest. She had been participating in an undisclosed experiment. The praise did not feel like reward. It felt like evidence. After the meeting, the staff dispersed quietly. Conversations were restrained. No one laughed. No one celebrated the clarity of leadership. The executives left, satisfied that transparency had been delivered. But the damage had already settled in the room. Lena approached him privately. Her tone remained calm, but the distance in it was unmistakable. She told him she felt studied, not supported or studied. She said returning money was not a test of loyalty, it was basic decency. She said answering questions honestly did not mean consenting to evaluation. She explained that trust requires mutual awareness. Each sentence narrowed his defense. He attempted to frame it as leadership responsibility, as necessary after past betrayal, as protection for the business. But the more he explained, the clearer the imbalance became. He had demanded authenticity while withholding his own identity. He had expected openness while operating in secrecy. She said that integrity offered under observation is different from integrity offered under surveillance. There was no anger in her voice. That made it harder to dismiss. She handed in her resignation the next morning. The news traveled quickly through the branch. The one employee publicly praised had chosen to leave. That decision carried more weight than the speech itself. If recognition felt like exposure, then safety did not exist. Within weeks, other key staff left too. Some cited new opportunities. Others cited stress. None directly challenged leadership, but the pattern was visible. Word spread across locations that management preferred hidden evaluation over open dialogue. Performance remained structured, but initiative declined. Employees focused on avoiding mistakes rather than improving service. Karim maintained operational standards. He tightened reporting systems. He formalized review processes. On paper, discipline improved, but credibility thinned. The reveal that was meant to establish authority instead exposed distance. The transparency he believed he was delivering arrived too late. The damage was not financial, it was relational. He had proven he could detect flaws. He had also proven he did not trust enough to speak openly, and the one employee who had acted with integrity without incentive had chosen to leave rather than remain inside a system built on hidden tests. The restaurant remained open, efficient, and profitable. Revenue reports stabilized after the staff turnover. New hires filled the empty positions. Training manuals were updated to reflect stricter accountability. On paper, the system worked. There were fewer informal conversations during shifts, fewer spontaneous decisions, fewer visible mistakes. Operations moved with mechanical precision, but the warmth was gone. Where there had once been small exchanges between tables and staff, there was now careful distance. Employees followed scripts more closely. Smiles appeared at the right time and disappeared just as quickly. Eye contact was professional, not personal. No one lingered longer than required. Service felt correct, but never relaxed. Conversations among staff shifted in tone. Break room discussions centered on policies, not ideas. Questions about improvement were asked cautiously, if at all. Initiative declined because initiative carried risk. If hidden evaluations had existed before, employees assumed they could exist again. It was safer to perform minimally above expectation than to experiment with excellence. Karim still visited locations in silence. He no longer needed disguises, his identity was known. But the silence remained. When he entered a branch, posture straightened instantly. Voices lowered. Managers followed him with quiet urgency. Staff reviewed tasks in their minds while maintaining composure. His presence no longer revealed trouble, it altered it. He observed the difference immediately. When he asked casual questions, answers were structured and brief. When he inquired about challenges, responses were filtered. No one volunteered internal concerns without being directly prompted. Even then, The language was cautious. The transparency he had eventually offered had not restored balance. It had confirmed fear. In meetings, executives reported compliance improvements, fewer discrepancies, fewer reported incidents. Measurable performance indicators trended upward. He listened, nodded, approved adjustments. The data supported stability. But something less measurable had narrowed. Managers avoided bringing him uncertain problems, choosing instead to resolve issues internally before escalating. They preferred presenting solutions over presenting vulnerabilities. The result was clean reporting and deeper isolation at the top. He received polished summaries rather than raw insight. At the branch where Lena had worked, her absence lingered quietly. The position was filled, the schedule adjusted, the workflow maintained. Customers were served on time. But the steady presence that once anchored the floor was missing. No complaint was filed about her departure. No protest was raised. The silence around her leaving felt heavier than open criticism would have. Kareem visited that location several times after her resignation. Each time, the service met standards. Each time, it felt narrower. Staff avoided extended interaction. Even neutral exchanges carried an undercurrent of restraint. He could not identify a specific violation. Nothing was wrong enough to correct. That absence of visible fault left him with nothing to fix. He began to understand that control had limits. Policies could enforce behavior. Audits could enforce compliance. But they could not manufacture trust once it had thinned. The environment he now led was stable, but guarded, structured, but distant. He had wanted certainty. He achieved predictability instead. Late at night, reviewing reports alone, he noticed how little qualitative feedback reached him. Suggestions were shorter. Concerns were fewer. Employees no longer risked expressing discomfort openly. The system had adapted to scrutiny by minimizing exposure. He still valued integrity. He still believed in high standards. But the cost of securing them through secrecy had surfaced in quieter ways. The restaurants operated smoothly, yet the human element had contracted. He had proof of competence, but no proof of trust. And in the absence of trust, leadership felt less like partnership and more like supervision. The business continued forward. The distance remained. He ignored the difference between evaluation and connection. He mistook control for security. The honesty he wanted was already there. It deserved transparency and not a test.